C2 Wrestling Podcast is back. The boys, CTD, Snowden, wrestling. It's just every time we come on here, it's like, man, busy week in wrestling, busy week in WWE, busy week, busy week. It's just busy every week.
It's just busy every week. Wrestling for the last, couple of years, I'll say at least, I go back sometimes and I think back to like post Mania 37 when, COVID was kind of becoming a forgotten thing and wrestling was getting back to a normalcy. And then you have WrestleMania 38. That's like the start of this. Wrestling's been great for a while now for me. Every week of wrestling, there's just something to talk about.
There is, and one thing we have to talk about before we get into anything, Snowden,
Mm-hmm.
how you doing?
I'm all right. Congested as always. Nothing new here. Got an
How's the
allergist I'm going to
ankle?
see soon.
Any injuries?
Ankle's hurting a little bit. It's okay. I sat on it a little bit yesterday. It was hurting a little. It's all right though. For those of you that maybe this is your first C2 podcast you're joining in for, we're starting to gain up some subscribers. We've got some new people coming around. So if you haven't caught a podcast yet, there's always some ailment that one of us is going through. One of us has got a hurt foot. One of us is sick, falling apart. Usually it's me, but
Yeah, it's like an 80-20 relationship.
Right. Yeah, it's like an 80-20 relationship. Yeah.
But, always got to ask, make sure the boy's doing okay. Wrestling is just insane. We talked about Monday Night Raw. Week 2, better than week 1 of the Netflix show.
By far.
And like I can't believe it. I can't believe there was people complaining that the show ended at 10:30. That was one of the smoothest 2.5 hour shows I watched in so long. Why did we did not need another half hour of that show?
You hear that? It's the world's smallest violin. Cry me a river. Who fucking cares? The show can end at 9:30 if it's great wrestling. It can end at 11:30 if it's great wrestling. Obviously, WWE is still going to have a structure to the Monday night shows. Yes, they have this free range Netflix. They're not going to have 5 hour Raws. They're not going to have hour and a half Raws. 2 hours to 3 hours is kind of the sweet spot. And I don't think people understand like the logistics of it too. They might have like an opening with Netflix to run for however long they want, but they still have this venue that they only have till X amount of time. They have to get out of the arena, the stadium, whatever it may be, by whatever time. It's not that simple. 2.5 hours of just content too. There was a couple ad breaks, not during the matches. They're quick ad breaks by the sponsors. A lot of them are just WWE promos. That 2.5 hours of Raw was 2.5 fantastic hours of wrestling. Nothing to complain about. If you are complaining, get real.
Yeah, like it is so clear when you watch it that there's less commercials. Like
Yes.
the Gable Penta match, they go to a commercial, and the commercials are shorter too, which is very obvious.
Beautiful.
Gable comes out, they go to a commercial. I'll put in quotes, commercial. From Penta's entrance until the end of his promo, they didn't go to commercial break.
Beautiful. It was, and I was watching it, thinking it during that match.
Yeah.
It was fantastic that they didn't do that. Now, listen, are they going to run an ad break during a match eventually? Yeah, I'm sure. But there's a difference in like two nobodies having a match and you running an ad break versus like the Penta debut match. If Cody Rhodes were to have a match on SmackDown, whatever, it's going to happen. But to have the option to not do it is great. It really is fantastic. We said it during our Raw review. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Those 2.5 hours flew by. Typically, I'll watch wrestling. I'll watch Raw, SmackDown. Sometimes I like to eat before the show. Maybe I'll have some dinner during the show. I couldn't find 5 minutes to like get up and go make a sandwich because I was going to miss something. It was great.
I also hate to be the bearer of bad news. Actually, love to be the bearer of bad news. I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
The pallbearer of bad
the
news.
Pallbearer of Bad News Barrett. That's a 3 hour show if they're on network TV. Like that is,
absolutely.
It seemed to have the same amount of segments, the same amount of matches. Like
honestly, if
it's on network TV, that's a 3 hour show.
It's a 3 hour show on network TV with less than we got on Netflix, to be honest. Yeah. A 3 hour show on cable is really only going to be like 2 hours or so. We got 2.5 hours with the ad breaks, like 220 of content? It's probably 10 minutes of ad breaks in total throughout the entire event. Nothing to complain about again.
No, thoroughly enjoyed. It did bring some matches for Saturday night's main event. Now, next week,
Absolutely.
we will have a prediction video. I would assume Friday, tomorrow on SmackDown, we get one or two more matches.
Mm,
Maybe a tag title match gets set up. Maybe a women's uh, championship rematch gets set up. The women's title is being defended tomorrow. I could see something funky happening in that match.
yeah.
So this isn't like a full-blown predictions, but they did officially announce the men's intercontinental and the men's world heavyweight championship being defended. I would assume Gunther and Jay are the main event of the show, given the
Yeah.
fact that Cody and Owens in the latter match is on the Rumble. I've seen some discourse on social media that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed right now.
Let's hear it.
Did you see it?
I didn't see it. No, I have no idea what you're about to talk about.
It is our civic duty as the certified Gunther Stan account. I've been
Man.
seeing some slander.
Okay.
I've seen slander of people saying, "Oh, he can't catch heat. Oh, every promo is the same. This isn't as good as the IC title." Meh, 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 meh. If you don't shut the fuck up and realize the greatness, every second of Gunther is greatness. You should be thanking him for gracing your television screen, for talking, for posting an extra 30-second promo on his socials that was way better than any promo of your favorite superstar. I will not sit here in silence while there's slander of the GOAT.
So I didn't know what you were going to get into, but I have seen a tweet or two about this IC title run was better. Gunther's not great on the mic, blah, 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 whatever it is. I will not stand for it. In all honesty, if you can look at Gunther in the ring, on the mic, his look, his style, anything about him, and you are complaining, well, cancel Christmas because you're going to be complaining about everything. There's no way if you can't find something to like in Gunther, then you like any other thing in wrestling. You must hate everything if you're hating on what they're doing with Gunther right now. He is the wrestler's wrestler. Like he is as good as it gets in the business. Now, wrapping it a little bit back to Saturday night's main event, I've been on record saying that this whole show is kind of just thrown in there. It's a little bit filler. And it does seem that way, yes. What are they going to have? Gunther just pin Jay clean and the Saturday night's main event. I don't think that really does anything for Jay. It puts another head on the spike for Gunther, a head he already has, though. So it's not the biggest match maybe they could have, but it's two of the biggest superstars they have, so why not throw it on the card? You need to get Gunther in there somewhere. He's got to have a title match again eventually. If it's not going to be at the Rumble, you made the Saturday night's main event card. You might as well throw him on there. I just can't imagine watching anything Gunther and being like, nah, this ain't it. That mind-boggling to me.
I I hate the comparisons of Gunther's IC title run to his world title run. They're
Mm,
not supposed to be the same.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know how else to explain it. That if we got a copy and paste of Gunther's IC title run, it would be everything we've seen already. And on top of it, these are two completely different titles. He
Mm,
was a workhorse intercontinental champion. Great. He was awesome. Probably the GOAT at that. When it comes to the world title, it's tough to be the guy who's on TV defending it every single week when it's a world championship. There's only so
yes.
many challenges you have. Then you go into the next factor. It's also a little bit of a weird time frame. You have the Netflix change, so much focus on Roman and The Rock and Cody. And could they treat Gunther a little bit better and have him in a prominent moment? I've been advocating that he should have been on the Raw on the
Mm-hmm.
Netflix debut. There should have been a moment for him there. But that doesn't lessen his title run for me. He's facing bigger names during this title run. He's becoming more marquee. And when it comes to being a world champion, the biggest thing for me is when you looked at Roman's title run, you look at a lot of the big title runs, the Brock title runs, you make them must see matches. Very rarely are you getting a match on Raw of Gunther. You know when he has a match, it's a big match. It's a big match feel. And finally, on this point, the comparison of the IC title run to the world title run. That is the same as any other champion and being like, wow, I didn't like his mid-card title run compared to his WWE title. They're not supposed to be the same. The
Yeah,
John Cena's US title run, when that finished, where you're like, man, I hope when Cena wins the WWE title, he has an open challenge every single week and just does the same thing over again. No, that's how those things remain special. You don't just repeat the exact same thing and hope that everyone just, all right, yeah, sure, let's watch it again.
absolutely. You have to have these things remain special, and there has to be differences in the title runs. Even take example DIY, two-time tag team champions. That first tag team title run on SmackDown was short-lived. Don't get me wrong, very different than their second tag team title run. How do you differentiate the title runs between these people, even if it's the same title, let alone different titles? As you said, the IC title, the World Heavyweight title, the US to the WWE, they are different championships. The IC title is the workhorse title. Now you look at Seth Rollins, World Heavyweight Champion. Yeah, he was defending that title left and right. He was on Raw every week. The title was brand new. They established it as a world championship that you want to fight for. Gunther is an anomaly. He is similar in an aspect of Andre the Giant. He is a spectacle. Man, he may not be 9 feet tall with all his big curly hair, but he is a spectacle to see. He is not a guy you have wrestle every day. You have Gunther wrestle every now and again because it really makes you go, wow, Gunther only wrestles once every couple weeks. I gotta watch this Gunther match. It is a spectacle to see. It is not just Gunther. It is almost really the championship placeholder that is the spectacle to see. You know, it's that competitor that doesn't need to wrestle every week. Cody Rhodes to Gunther. If Cody Rhodes were to wrestle every SmackDown, fine. I'm not going to complain about it. That's great. He is a different type of champion than Gunther is. He should not be running an open challenge every Friday night SmackDown either. There's a way to go about the title runs. There's a way to go about the superstars. Gunther, from his debut onward in NXT UK as Walter, maybe the stint in NXT UK was a little bit too long, sure. In hindsight, not really, because who knows what would have happened under that Vince regime. He came up for a Survivor Series traditional tag and got pinned in, what, a minute and a half? Thank God Gunther didn't come up during that Vince era. So it kind of worked out for Gunther. He, from top to bottom, might be the best booked wrestler, mark my words, in WWE history. Who really has had better booking in such a short stint? Cena had an all-time run. I get it. Cena didn't lose for a while. Yeah, sure. But something about this Gunther run. He's been champion more often than not.
Since his official call up, he's been pinned twice.
It's insane. It's insane.
Pinned twice in what, like 4 years? Like three
Yeah, and like
years, something like that.
like the people that have pinned him over his entire career, it's only 5 or 6 people, like in total. You know,
Yeah.
the recent pins were Cody Rhodes and Sami Zayn, and then Braun Breaker right before the call up in NXT 2.0, which is still kind of the Vince regime, you know. So like Gunther was maybe not the focal point for him. Insane. It really is the most insane run we've seen out of a superstar in a long time.
I To harp on it again though, I hate the comparison of him as IC champion compared to him as the world champion, and you can't like understand why it has to be different. Like he is when he was the Intercontinental Champion, was stressing how he's the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, and he's the workhorse, and his goal is to be, you know, without a doubt, the longest reigning IC champion ever. You name it. The World Champion, we have said it plenty of times. He's leveled up.
Mm.
This is him at that next level. He's establishing himself amongst the greats. The IC title, he was establishing himself as the greatest Intercontinental Champion. He levels up as a world champion. Now he's facing the likes of the Randy Ortons, the Seth Rollins, Damian Priest.
Mm.
I know he faced Drew for the IC title, but Drew is even elevated since then. Like, this is a different category of people. When you look at his Mania opponents, I mean, no disrespect to Sheamus and Drew. They
Mm.
obviously are greats, but at that time they were really mid card. Sheamus has still really been kind of stuck in the mid card. His potential Mania opponents haven't been like that. since the tail end of his IC title run to the world title slash King of the Ring, you're talking rumored opponents of Brock Lesnar, of John Cena, of Goldberg. Like he is up that level. He is in that
Yeah.
next level of characters. There's no more 3 weeks against Nakamura, 5 weeks against Ricochet. No disrespect to these guys. These guys aren't bad, but you're crazy if you're comparing them to Goldberg and Brock Lesnar
Yeah.
and John Cena. That tail end of his IC title run, he jumped up. And now he's jumped up again and he's jumping up again. He's in a completely different category. Stop harping on that IC title run.
Yeah, absolutely. There's divisions in wrestling. There's the tag team division, the mid card division, and then there's the main card. The heavyweight card, whatever you want to call it.
The main event.
They're the main event. Yeah, and like you kind of named a few people. You got Gunther, you got Cena, you got Rollins, you got Goldberg, you got Brock, you got all these names getting thrown out there. Gunther is, he put on clinics with Chad Gable. Chad Gable is a guy that should be a champion, absolutely. But Chad Gable is a top tier mid carder right now. By all means, can be a world heavyweight champion one day. I would love to see it. But Gunther has leveled up from the Chad Gable feud into greener pastures. There's more for Gunther as a world heavyweight champion. And hell, you now have him at this upper echelon, right, of the world heavyweight champion. And you take a guy that he had a stellar feud with, like a Chad Gable, and now you work up a Chad Gable with a stable and American made, and maybe a U.S. title run. The Creed Bros get the tag titles, and you have this great faction. And now you have your world heavyweight champion, Gunther, facing the now leveled up Chad Gable, who can then eventually maybe take the title off Gunther, and you have yourself a superstar in Chad Gable. There's levels to this, and we're just explaining it to y'all.
Now that I've gotten that off my chest, we'll get to the Gunther's old title, the Intercontinental Championship. Braun Breaker was announced to be facing Sheamus. They've got plenty of history, so even though this match is kind of thrown together last minute, it feels they're familiar faces. The last time they faced one-on-one, I want to say Ludwig got involved anyway.
Yeah.
And then
Sounds
they
right.
faced in the triple threat, and Sheamus ended up taking the pin, but it was from, I think, Ludwig distracted him or something like that. But he hasn't had that legit one-on-one rematch. I'm not looking for a prediction. We'll get into predictions next week. I'm more so looking at long term. Is this the beginning of the journey for Sheamus to finally get that? Forget what he called it, the undisputed Grand Slam champion, something like that. But
Yeah.
that final token, because he'd be the only one. There's the Grand Slam titles, but then he also has won the Money in the Bank, the Royal Rumble, and King of the
King
Ring.
of the Ring. Yeah.
So he'd be the ultimate Grand Slam. Is this step one again of him getting there?
That is a hell of an achievement. And we have been saying this for years. There's even an era where Sheamus, was getting a little rough. They weren't working him great, and there was a lot of like get off my TV type heat on Sheamus. Sheamus is an all-timer. That is a first ballot Hall of Fame wrestler. Accolades out the ass for Sheamus. Sheamus's career does not end without him getting that IC championship. Is it now? I think so. I think this is maybe the slow build to putting it on Sheamus. Now, you got to think, like Saturday Night's Main Event, not a prediction, but if Braun were to lose to Sheamus at Saturday Night's Main Event, I don't really know what it does for Braun. What do you do with Braun next? I think Braun has to kind of win here. And then you can have the climb for Sheamus. You can kind of build Sheamus up to be fighting for the shot again at the IC title. Maybe it's at Mania. Maybe it's a little bit past that. Who knows? Why not give that title to Sheamus at some point? The point when you do it, though, would be the point where you're ready to take it off Braun and you have something new for Braun to get into. And then you have a new IC champion in Sheamus, and he can eventually hand the belt down to somebody else as well. There's obviously plans in motion for months out in wrestling, and things are always subject to change. Something tells me they have something on their minds here for Sheamus. Having him kind of go against Braun for the IC title in this kind of road to WrestleMania time frame leads me to believe Sheamus versus Braun. Maybe it's a multi-man. Maybe we get Sheamus versus Braun versus Ludwig versus whoever. Maybe it's a ladder match. Who knows? I think Sheamus gets the match at WrestleMania against Braun Breaker as well.
I think so too. And as we know, last year's Mania had the big moment of Sammy beating Gunther.
Mm,
So I'm not saying like, oh, you got to create another big moment for the IC title. But when it comes to Sheamus finally getting that IC title, this is years this story has gone on. I mean,
yeah.
years. Think back to even before the Clash at the Castle, but to Clash at the Castle when he loses to Gunther and gets the standing ovation. And it seems like that was kind of the hot point. And then also seems like when they get to Mania 39, oh, that could be the point that they do it. Then Drew gets added, and you're really building up the sympathy for him, and then it's cooled off. And now
Mhm.
we're looking at 2 years later, and you're talking about over 2 years of that, 2.5 years really of that chase for finally getting the final one. If he were to just win the IC title at Saturday night's main event, boy, it would feel like they just jumped right into it, announced it, and he won it right away. Like there's so much built up emotion with this
Mhm.
that you can have him lose again, maybe not full blown tailspin, but really get that sympathy back to the hotness of around Clash at the Castle and around Mania 39, going into Mania 41, to where when he wins, that reaction is nuclear.
Nuclear. You have the opportunity to book this in a way where Sheamus versus whoever as the IC champ could main event a pay per view. The Sheamus IC title win could be as big as anybody winning a world championship because it means so much to Sheamus. That standing ovation he got at Clash of the Castle, right? Clash of the Castle, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it was the first one.
yeah. The first one. Yep. That is probably like the peak of Sheamus's career to that point. Truly, like he's has so many accolades, but I even try to put myself in those shoes. Man, winning that championship must feel great, but like you're standing in that ring and having that kind of ovation from the crowd has got to be it sends chills down your spine type thing. The last thing for Sheamus to really do, and not that it's the last thing he's going to do, but he's got to get that IC title. We just kind of talked a little bit about his run. Sheamus has been around for 4 iterations of that Intercontinental Championship belt and
Yeah.
hasn't won it. That's a lot, it's a lot.
Yeah.
The last bit of time, there was an injury. Sheamus, at a point, was not coming back. He was never going to wrestle again, it seemed. So for him to come back, he ain't coming back for nothing. He's coming back to be that ultimate Grand Slam champion, whatever they're calling it. Sheamus IC title run, put it on the books for 2025. It happens.
And he just signed a new 5-year deal he
Mm-hmm.
announced on Chris Van Vliet. He ain't going anywhere.
Nope.
He'll be there. There's plenty of, you know, as we've said, he could face Ludwig every week. I'd still be tuned
Yeah.
in. Like
Yep.
they
100%.
are
Yeah.
guaranteed. Sheamus puts on banger after banger. You want a workhorse IC champion. Look, I love Braun. They haven't really given him the chance to be one.
Mm-hmm.
Give Sheamus the strap at Mania and have him run open challenges for 2-3 months.
Yeah.
It'd be the best match on the show every night.
Yeah. Sheamus is honestly the perfect guy to do that. I know we were just kind of maybe shitting on Gunther running an open challenge for the world title, but again, there's levels to this. It's different, the world title to the IC title. Sheamus is almost the perfect guy to win that championship and as a face be like, I didn't win this championship to not prove that I earned this championship. Open challenge, open challenge, open challenge until it devolves into some sort of feud between Sheamus and whoever. Who knows? Those transfer windows open for the foreseeable future. Who knows what's going to happen? I definitely think the IC title run for Sheamus is on the horizon. I don't know if it's going to happen at Mania, but I would not be surprised at all. I am going to lean towards it happening at Mania, but I don't know if he wins it at Mania. I think it might be a little bit more of a longer story for Sheamus.
I don't think there's any. I'm trying to think of the overseas
Oh, isn't
shows.
there isn't there an Ireland show in on Raw or something? But that's pre Mania. He's not
Yeah,
going to
it's
win
it's
the
a pre-Mania Raw. I mean, if there is not a better Raw for a fiery Sheamus promo about how he's going to WrestleMania to win the
well,
Intercontinental
exactly.
title,
Yeah, I was just gonna say he's not going
that'd
to
be
win the IC
perfect.
title on that Raw, but maybe that's where he defies all odds and wins the
Number one
gauntlet.
contender.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
100%. Yeah,
that's very possible. After Raw, I mean, after Mania, I think Backlash is rumored to be in Mexico. I don't think it's been officially announced.
I
There's
I
going to be a
actually I
Saudi show there
yes,
too.
There will be a Saudi show. I did see something today kind of putting a killer to the Mexico backlash rumors. I don't know if it's true though. I didn't see who it was kind of work cited by, but backlash is going to be somewhere. It's not going to be in the States probably. They've been doing this overseas thing for backlash and it's been fantastic. Mexico City, I've been saying for years, has got to run a PLE. And with all these faces now, you got Dragon Lee, you got LWO, you got Penta. Mexico City has got to be on the horizon eventually. But I don't know. The Ireland show would be a great thing for Sheamus, but I don't predict an Ireland PLE or anything anytime soon.
You just reminded me though, before we get into the next topic
Mm-hmm.
with the Ireland Raw on the Road to
Mm-hmm.
Mania, whatever. It's going to be weird watching WWE live at like 3 p.m. Like, hopefully, I'm not
Yeah.
at work at like 2, 3 p.m. Us doing our recap
Yeah.
show at like 5 in the evening or something.
Yeah.
Like,
It is
that's gonna be
not
a
going to
weird
feel right.
stretch.
Yeah. It's going to be such a weird stretch. I honestly, God, that's so odd to even think about. I'd have to start getting prepped right now to watch Raw. I have to
Yeah,
start getting ready.
yeah.
It's middle of the
You be
day
you
for
be
us.
making lunch instead of
Yeah.
making
It's
dinner.
dinner. Yeah. That's
Yes,
funny.
very very odd thing. But you mentioned works cited. You mentioned reports in talking about Mexico City. There is someone who has covered all bases in a story about someone else. There is plenty of talk around Corey Graves. We saw him on NXT last week.
Mhm.
Very unhappy, as clear as can be. Our buddy Dave Meltzer left no stone unturned when he said, "This is a work. Oh no, this is a shoot. Oh, trust me, people in WWE have assured me this is a work. Oh, this is definitely a shoot." So no matter what, Meltzer will be correct in whatever this is. I don't think we have enough information. This all still feels pretty fresh. Does it feel like they're working us and they're, potentially leading towards a Corey Graves in-ring return?
So I want to start by saying C2 Wrestling is not here to ever get a shout out or be affiliated with the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Dave Meltzer's a fucking goof, man. Like, come on, dude. Like,
Yeah.
the sky's blue when he wants it to be blue type thing. It's just crazy that people take him seriously to this point in wrestling. Yeah, maybe there was an era where Dave Meltzer was the most accurate guy out there, things like that. I don't think any of these dirt sheet guys really know anything anymore. There's been so much that's been kind of hidden under wraps for a while. And this dates back to kind of the beginning of that Triple H regime. Even like small returns, the Bronson Reed return, Dexter Lumis Gargano, all these things were kept under wraps. I have to imagine the bigger things they're going to keep under wraps. The way they are portraying this, or at least Corey Graves is portraying this, it seems real. It seems like Graves is pissed. Seems like he took it as a shot to go down to NXT, thinks he's better than that. Maybe he's on his high horse a little bit. Maybe he should be grateful for even having an announcing gig. There's 6 of them in the company, like you got one, let's be real. I don't have one. I'll take the NXT spot, Graves. It's all right. But it could be a work, man. I'm not saying it is. I think I'm leaning towards it being legitimate, but Graves hinted at, like, in his very first tweet, the being told you can't do this anymore. Maybe it's not a hint. Maybe he was just saying that. But, he's been cleared for a little bit now. Maybe he is trying to work his way back up, get in the ring. Maybe he's in the fucking Rumble. Who knows? But what would be the point? Who do you have Graves come back and face? Who would be his
Well,
opponent? Would he come back and face Wade Barrett? Would it also be a Wade Barrett return because there's commentary beef?
you're close.
Yeah.
I personally, no disrespect, to me, there's so many good stories. There's so much good going on that this doesn't interest me.
Mm.
But my buddy mentioned it in our work group chat. He said, "Are they really going to run Corey Graves versus Pat McAfee at WrestleMania?"
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but I don't think they're gonna. Graves is, and I'll say it too. Graves is a great commentator. He really is. He is like the next iteration of Michael Cole, if I'm being honest. I feel a little bit bad for him if this is all legit, and he did kind of get like stiffed a little bit because, don't get me wrong, Michael Cole's a mainstay. Wade Barrett's been fantastic. Wade Barrett should be on one of these main shows. Tessator coming around, great new name to have. He's been solid. Why not have him on a main show? Pat McAfee, he comes and goes. He's not really around. I like McAfee, but it is a little bit of like, man, you're giving this to McAfee over me when I'm busting my ass every day here. So if this is legitimate, I kind of understand the frustration a little bit, but you still, again, you got to go the Vic Joseph route. You got to be a little bit more grateful for having the opportunity. Vic Joseph has been fantastic in commentary for years, and he's still just the NXT guy. He easily could be on Monday Night Raw or Friday
He
Night
was.
SmackDown. He was, still could be.
He got the demotion.
He got the demotion, and he's handled it wonderfully. You know, you've seen that pat on the back he gave Graves during NXT last week, and Graves, as you said, was not thrilled. I don't know if Graves has like the star power to him to have this ultimate like WrestleMania comeback match. He was only an NXT superstar during the beginning days of NXT. I don't know if there's many people that really remember Graves in the ring to the point where if Graves' music's hit at WrestleMania, people aren't going to know who it is until he comes out. You know, I don't know if it does enough for us to see Graves back in the ring to that level. I don't think it's needed at WrestleMania.
Well, I could tell you something. It'd go nuclear if he came out in the Rumble. Or 2 weeks out from the Rumble. If he was a
Yeah,
surprise Rumble entrant, that'd be
it would.
great. That'd be
No, it would
that'd
be
be
crazy.
pretty insane. Every
Listen,
time they do the surprise Rumble entrance, he's never
yeah,
one of them. You know, it's Cole or
yeah.
McAfee or Booker or something.
Yeah, I'm not
So it
opposed
would
to
be
it at all.
surprising.
I wouldn't be surprised at the Mania or the Rumble entrant. I wouldn't hate the Rumble entrance at all. I just don't know if like Graves versus McAfee, Graves versus Barrett even, which I'd prefer, but like, is that WrestleMania worthy? Does that take a slot at WrestleMania?
That was my thinking. I will sympathize with Corey for a second though. If this can two things can be true at once. This can
Yes,
be a work and he can also be upset about it.
correct.
If it is not a work and he's upset about it, I sympathize in the fact that this is a guy that there was even a stretch where they made him do play by play, something he was
Uh-huh.
completely foreign to. And he honestly did damn good. Like he did, like, was he Michael Cole level? No, but no one is Michael Cole. He was really good in that role that was completely new to him and completely out of the ordinary. And him and Wade became a really good team and a different kind of dynamic for wrestling announce teams because it was two color commentators doing a show instead of a play by play and a color commentator. So, in that aspect, you have a guy who learned the job, became great at it, survived all the obstacles. They throw curveballs his way. He continues to hit it out of the park. All for them to be like, oh, well, we want to stick with two-man boots for Raw and SmackDown because Cole and Pat have their chemistry, and then Joe is still new to WWE and he has great chemistry with Wade, so we don't want to mess that up. We're gonna move you down to NXT. Like I can sympathize that being frustrating for how much he has put in to that role to then
Mm-hmm.
get the drop down. To us, though, we look at NXT as a lot of times most of the shows are better than Raw or better than SmackDown. So to us as fans, we're like, this is you're not moving down at all. This is a lateral movement. But that's to us. That's not to him. I get it. You know, you could potentially not be working a WrestleMania. Who knows? If he does return to the ring, I'm not against a Graves return to the ring, but a Graves McAfee match does not interest me.
Not at all. No, Graves McAfee match does absolutely nothing for me. I feel like the problem is with the Graves return, right? Whether it's the Rumble or Mania or post that, whether he has one match or two or three, like what do you do with him after? What is Graves going to have like an actual run as a wrestler? Like it just, where does Graves fit in against this massive crop of talent they have right now? Does a Graves IC title run fit the picture compared to the Braun or the Sheamus or Carmelo or all the, again, this massive crop of talent? This is obviously very forward thinking. This all could be legitimate and Graves is not returning to the ring. But, you know, it sparks the ideas that he could. Graves, the problem is the only person he'd really have like any sort of connection, feud, anything with is in AEW. It would be Pat. It would be Neville. And that ain't happening. So, like, Graves doesn't have anyone to, like, come out and return or attack or do this or that unless it's one of these commentary guys, unless he is returning for Wade or is returning for Pat. And on the flip side, I keep mentioning Wade. I'm pretty sure Wade's on record saying he would return for Drew and pretty much Drew only. So I don't know if Wade's really in the picture for that. Pat McAfee, listen, I love Pat. I don't even need him wrestling at WrestleMania this year. I don't need the Pat McAfee
I don't need Pat
spectacle
wrestling
every
ever
year,
again.
ever again, to be honest. Yeah, he did his like couple matches. It's cool. Yeah, Logan Paul is like a different entity. You know, again, Pat McAfee, you put him on the slot. Who's not in that slot then? I don't need it. Plain and simple.
Now, if is real and Graves is just saying, hey, just get rid of me, get me out of here, I want out, and he were to go to AEW, I personally speaking, I get AEW does not want to be WWE 2.0. Hate to break it to them right now, they basically are, 2019, 2020 WWE.
Yeah.
If they want to do a big fix to a lot of things, if they got Graves on commentary and with maybe just one person, possibly to maybe it's just Excalibur and Graves, or it's Excalibur, Graves, and Taz max. I think that would do so much for their product. My fear is they'd bring them in, they'd do like a 5, 6 man booth. It'd be those three, and then JR and Tony Schiavone and
Yeah.
RJ City or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the fear. It's like they wouldn't properly do it. But if you want to like actually shape up the
Mm-hmm.
commentary, 'cause to me, I am not a fan of AEW's
No.
commentary. It's like they do way too many people, way too many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say candidly, we were not fans of Adnan Virk, Kevin Patrick, Jimmy Smith. WWE has been through their commentary booths in the past. It's been good, it's been not good. Excalibur, Tony Schiavone, trash. I was garbage. All right, listen, not great commentary, and a lot of it again is the logic in wrestling. I think back a lot to an AEW skit. I don't know, match. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but there was a point where something was off timing, and Hangman Adam Page was supposed to come into the ring, attack somebody, hit somebody with a clothesline or whatever, and the timing was off. So Adam Page like comes out of the under the ring or wherever he came from, gets into the ring, the timing is off, doesn't hit his little lariat clothesline, backs out, and then comes back. And then the commentary played it off like, oh my God, that's the first time we've seen Adam Page tonight. Like, they treat us like we're dumb fans. And WWE has done this in the past, and they got so much hate for it. But that hate doesn't really seem to go AEW's way by the AEW loyalists, and that's fine. Loyal to the company or loyal to it's okay. You can watch whatever you want to watch, but you have to be a realist at some point and acknowledge shit when it's shit. And you can't just polish a turd and make it any better. It's still a turd, But you can add Corey Graves to that mix, and it kind of helps it out a little bit. It does for sure. Graves is probably one of the best wrestling commentators around right now. Honestly, he's in that field with Michael Cole. AEW, in honesty, needs this to be real. They need a Corey Graves. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that would be again almost it's the cliche like, oh, if one is leaving one side, if the other side gets some, I know it's like we do it with every single wrestler
Yeah.
at this point. But it would be interesting giving a guy with a live mic. My fear though, if they did it, if you thought there was pot shots from both sides before,
Yeah.
whew,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
commentators,
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah.
endless. Forget the
Yeah. Well,
promos.
it's funny though too, because AEW has taken so many shots at WWE over the years. Like they really have been on their high horse for a while, if I'm being honest. They thought they were this mega company, and they never were what they even thought they were, if we're being honest. So many shots have been taken. WWE, not that many shots. Maybe a particular wrestler or two has said a thing or two, but WWE is not booking people to go out there and take shots at AEW. Graves, if he were on AEW commentary, I'm sure he's going to be taking shots left and right at WWE for the situation it is. It doesn't help AEW though. If you're AEW, you got to bring Graves in, but you got to tell him to keep his mouth shut in that realm. Maybe there's other avenues for Graves though. Maybe Graves goes to TNA.
I love that.
Love that. I would love that.
Honestly, I'd love Graves wrestling in TNA.
Yeah, 100%. That would actually be arguably better than him wrestling in WWE. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he'd probably go right to the main event scene.
Yeah, yeah.
Have relevant feuds. That's something I could get behind. Speaking of TNA, excuse me, I kind of thought the relationship with WWE and TNA was pretty much over. Not that they like it was something bad that happened.
Hmm.
You just saw less of it. It kind of faded away until this past Tuesday. Masha Slamovich, the current TNA Knockouts champion, is sitting front row watching. And it's like the quick reminder, all right, still anything's possible. Now, Genesis is this week or next week, I forget.
Off the
It
top of my head, I'm
is
not sure.
it's one or the other. It's either this week or next week. But that is Jordan Grace's last match with TNA, it seems. Josh Alexander seems to be wrapping up. Both of them seem very possible for WWE. Grace, I would see going to the main roster.
Yes. She
Um,
already had an NXT stint, really, you
yeah,
know?
Josh Alexander, I could see. I mean, you want to talk about a guy where NXT needs him more than he needs NXT. Very possible that they both go over. But even if they don't, it is still refreshing that this relationship is still a thing and we still have the added factor of anything can happen at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. I never thought the relationship between the two companies was over. Obviously, it was on a bit of the back burner for a little bit. You had Jordan Grace, you had Joe Hendry, you have some people go over to TNA, but you can't be doing it every week. So you put these things on the back burner, it keeps it special again. There was no prediction, no announcement of Masha showing up at NXT. So I was, oh, wow, like, holy shit, they got something here. And that's, again, already such a deep women's roster down in NXT. To add the likes of the TNA women's roster only does wonders for them. Jordan Grace, I definitely think is main roster bound. I think she is locked in for WWE. I don't even think it's a debate. She's coming to WWE. Josh Alexander, 97% sure he's coming to WWE as well. Where else would he go? Why else would he go anywhere else? Again, you said it. I completely agree. NXT needs Josh Alexander. It doesn't have to be some stellar 10-month, year long NXT run. It could be a 6-month NXT run. Call him up. Who knows what ego, all Ethan Page is there. There's a connection there. There's a lot they can maybe do. This is maybe bold, right? But if you want to really do something as WWE and you want to blow some minds, have Jordan Grace win that Royal Rumble.
Yeah, that would be insane.
Why not? Right? Why not? Well, and like, listen, we've already said this in some prediction videos, whatnot, in some reviews, podcasts, whatever it is. I'm pretty confident Charlotte Flair is returning and winning the Royal Rumble this year. But what a swerve it would be if you had Charlotte Flair return at the Rumble, Jordan Grace comes out the Rumble, and Jordan Grace eliminates Charlotte Flair.
Yeah, that I'm all on board for that. TNA does have a lot of big shows lined up in big arenas. They're kind of dipping their toe back into the next level up of arena size, and they haven't announced anything for these shows, but they're all, I think all of them, if not most of them, are pretty similar around WWE's schedule of being in those same cities. So I think it's more than likely this is the slow turn back to a full force. The relationship never ended, but them working together even more. Maybe WWE sending some bigger names to TNA events for these. I think it's Slammiversary. I could be wrong. One of their big pay-per-views is on Long Island, and it's going to be in a bigger arena. I believe the UBS arena. So they're going to need some names, although they're doing pretty well without having anything announced. So I do think that will kind of shape things out. Some people may head to TNA to help. Some people may be going from TNA to NXT. The main reason we bring up NXT, though, is this past Tuesday. We've reached kind of that not awkward point, but the point where it's pretty clear some people are about to be called up. It happens every time, when Ilya was about to be called up and he was still kind of there, kind of not. They do it with everyone.
Yeah.
They're doing the tease with Roxanne. Bailey comes out and interrupts her. They're doing the tease with Trick Williams. He's thinking about his future. Who do you think, if this transfer window ever ends,
Mm-hmm.
who do you think is getting that call up?
I mean, I think Roxanne and Trick are definitely on the realm of being called up. I think Roxanne might kind of pull double duty. Honestly, I think Roxanne might be that person that is still in NXT, but like has the Raw debut while still kind of showing up at NXT. I think Trick is a little bit of a ploy right now, or should I say, a trick. I think they're kind of booking it like he's going to come up, but ultimately, I think he's going to stay down in NXT until post Stand and Deliver, post WrestleMania. I think you run back Oba versus Trick at Stand and Deliver. I really think that's the money match for that PLE and for Oba and for Trick. Give Oba that 1, 2, 3, beat Trick again. Trick then gets called up after that. Trick is also a superstar. That guy, the charisma is through the roof with Trick Williams. He's a guy that you kind of want to strike while the iron's hot. And for him, the iron might be hot for a long time. But when you have him as over as he is right now, he was on SmackDown months ago before Carmelo even came up and had unreal pops. I think you have to get Trick on the main roster before it kind of dies down a little bit. Let's say you have him win the title back or lose again to Obafemi and then still is on NXT TV. It doesn't do anything for Trick. It only harms him at that point. Post Mania, Roxanne and Trick, I am going to guarantee get called up.
Now you also have Fraxium starting to get
Oh, yes.
a little tangle with DIY. And it's kind of interesting because if you asked me before NXT who's likely to get called up, I would put Fraxium in that mix. I'd be like, yeah, I think Fraxium, they're pretty much, even though the tag division isn't necessarily hurting, I think the main roster might get some tag splits or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Some movement, maybe a main roster tag team moves back down to NXT, whatever it may be. But DIY coming down there to work with Fraxium in this kind of champion versus champion, it almost kind of not pushes me away, but it nudges me a little more towards maybe they are going to stay in NXT for a little bit longer, and maybe it's like a post SummerSlam call up for them.
So Fraxium is that's C2's tag team of the year.
It
That's
is.
that's that they're a fantastic tag team. What other tag teams are there really down in NXT? They are on the come up with Miles Bourne and Tavion Heights. You got the family a little bit. You got Stax and Luca Crucifino. You
Hank
got
and
Tyson,
Tank.
Hank and Tank, Tyson DuPont, Tyreek Eway. But like a lot of these names are still green. Tavion Heights and Miles Bourne are maybe like the most built up team, and they still got maybe a little bit of ways to go. No diss. I'm not wild on OTM. I don't know if OTM really has it, if I'm being honest. Hank and Tank is a fun team. I don't know if they're tag team champions. I think Fraxium is one of those things where NXT needs Fraxium more than Fraxium needs NXT. But I do got to say, I don't know what video it was. It might have been more than one. I predicted this shit. All right. Listen, I'm good with this shit.
It might have been the
Fraxium,
NXT call up video.
it could have been the NXT call up video. I had said Fraxium is the perfect team. If there's ever been a team to hold two belts, Fraxium as the NXT Tag Team Champions and the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, workhorse teams. I kind of booked it if it's going to happen this way. I don't predict them winning the titles off DIY. DIY has kind of got a couple feuds going on. Caught me off guard to see them down in NXT. Maybe we see Fraxium on SmackDown this week. Maybe they're watching the DIY match now. We're getting a little bit of involvement both ways, which I would hope. I would hope it works that way, and it's not just DIY going down to NXT. Put some of the spotlight on Fraxium and show them on SmackDown. Have them run a match on SmackDown. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Let them show their spotlight. I think Fraxium is ready to be called up yesterday, but I kind of agree. I don't know if they're going to be fully main roster until Money in the Bank, SummerSlam, kind of that time frame.
Hear me out. We've
Mm-hmm.
been calling for a four-way tag title match at Saturday
Yep.
night's main event.
Yep.
What if we got DIY, Fraxium, the Machine Guns, and Pretty Deadly?
Sorry, Street Profits.
Well, they're
Yeah.
kind of like out of the story at
Yeah,
this
they're
point.
out of the story. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with the Street Profits, but they are kind of out of the story. That would be the four-way to do, and I would not hate it at all. I think that would be great. And I think the Guns are kind of past the point of winning the belts back right now. I think the Guns are in that position where they're going to lose the match onto different feuds, onto different things. So the belts, I think, stay on DIY for a little bit though, because they didn't really have a crazy first title run. So I don't predict them losing the belts anytime soon. But man, Fraxium really might be the perfect team to win those belts from DIY.
I could see though, I'm not going to say DIY drops the titles because I mean they really just won them back,
Mm-hmm.
but I could see them dropping them in a multi-team match.
Yeah,
Like that could be the avenue. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it is likely if they were to do the multi-team match, they keep telling Pretty Deadly they're owed the title shot, whatever. Maybe it's Pretty Deadly that kind of steals the win from them.
would love
Steals
it.
the yeah, steals the tag titles, and then DIY gets them whatever. The hardest part of this all is something that has been mentioned by us multiple times. It would be, I'm not saying I want to be able to predict these things, but it would be easier to map these things out if we knew when the fucking transfer window would end.
Yeah, I'm at that point where I don't think they're ever gonna like honestly, it might never end. It might just be a
It's gonna
permanent,
end.
you
It
can
has to end
transfer
at some
whenever.
point.
I listen, we've said this. I've beat a dead horse with this over not only C2, but just the course of my life talking about wrestling. I'm a brand guy, hard brand split. It's so easy if you decide in the middle of the year, oh, you know what? We need Jey Uso on SmackDown. We need to put Jimmy on Raw. Do a fucking trade, guys. It's
Yeah,
not that hard. Just
you've done
do
it
a
before.
fucking trade. You don't need to implement this massive transfer window. Honestly, I think they missed the ball on this too. Like, you're doing the Saturday Night's Main Event PLE, sure, in January. And again, it's a little bit shoehorned in there. What if you didn't do that show in January and instead you ran like a WWE draft special and you just did a whole entire redraft to get these people on the brands you want them to be on leading into Mania? I do think they have something they need to figure out going into this Mania, and it kind of affects wrestling post Mania. I can't, every road to WrestleMania can't be a transfer window. You can't just open up this transfer window every January to get the feuds to align where you want them to align. You have to have that line of thought before even, May, that like, okay, next year we might be leaning towards Roman Reigns versus The Rock. So, like, where do we put Roman Reigns? Where do we put this guy? Where do we put this guy to make sure that can happen? They got to think it through a little bit more. I'm over the transfer window. I hate the superstar shakeup, whatever they want to call it. I want a draft once a year, once every 2 years, some trades in between. Simple. Raw GM mode, SmackDown versus Raw GM mode. That's what I want.
I mean, they did it with Jay
Yeah.
and, you know, that Mania build, getting Jay onto Raw, whatever. Like, it's not guaranteed to go this way or anything like that, but it is, there are ways to do it. They've done it before. Is there any confirmed transfers outside of the Wyatt Six? I feel like there's been, but now that
On
who
Strowman to SmackDown.
was that confirmed?
Yeah, that was like when he returned in that match against, was it
Carmelo?
Carmelo? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Carmelo. That was Carmelo versus the newest SmackDown superstar.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, and it was Braun Strowman. Um,
I would
as
assume Penta is essentially confirmed
Raw.
for Raw.
Yeah, I would assume Penta's on Raw, which is great. I like that. I would assume American Made is SmackDown bound as well. Outside of that, I don't think anything has been made official. I'll say
See, now I'm almost like a little less inclined to think
because of
American made
Wyatt's. Yeah,
because the Wyatts go over there. And on top of it, I wouldn't be shocked if Sheamus wins the IC title and then you have a Sheamus Gable feud
Gable
for the
feud.
IC title.
Yeah, I do see. We've talked about this off air. Man, Gable and Ivy Nile with those U.S. titles. Put the tag titles on the Creed Bros. It just would look so great. I do agree. I do think SmackDown though needs like a stable to kind of counter the Wyatt Six. Like maybe the Final Testament goes over to SmackDown then or something. I do think they maybe need something to counteract the Wyatt Six. Judgment Day again is kind of falling apart here, so they're not really going to be a thing for so much longer. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's all to set up the Mania feuds, if we're being honest. I don't even know if they're thinking as far forward as post Mania. Hey, let's put the Wyatt Six on SmackDown so at Backlash they can face so and so. I think it's all we need this person here so they could face this person at WrestleMania.
It just hit me. We're probably going to get DIY versus Wyatt Six for the tag titles.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate that at all, to be honest. I mean, I think Wyatt Six,
Makes sense.
honestly,
Story you turn Gargano turned
yes, yeah,
on his boy Alex Shelley.
yeah. I mean, for me, like, listen, I like Bo. The most intriguing thing to the Wyatt Six for me is kind of Dexter Loomis and Joe Gacy. I'm going to be honest. Eric Rowan as well. I think when Wyatt Six was first coming around, it was hard for me to envision like how are they going to have these guys this gimmick like they're going after championships. Like it just doesn't. It was a little hard to like picture. It's a little bit easier now that they've been around a little bit. The stable's not what people expected it to be. I think it's not this like WWE champion ready stable. They're kind of working up a bit. There's still some imperfections I would change if it were up to me, but I would be down for a Dexter Loomis, Joe Gacy tag title run. Bo kind of running the show for them a little bit. Eric Rowan kind of the big henchman bodyguard. Nikki Cross is doing her own thing. Obviously, woman talent's a little bit different. I don't know. Wyatt Six is like an anomaly to me. I'm indifferent on them as a faction to begin with. I don't hate it. I'm not absolutely in love with it, but it's hard for me to like picture Dexter Loomis out there cutting a promo about how bad he wants the tag team titles.
I think let's be honest. The Wyatt Six has lost a bit of its lust
Yeah.
in the last few weeks to months. I think the way to kind of regain it and to make sense title wise is if they go into this DIY feud, say DIY get past the machine guns like we expect them to, and DIY still the champions. It makes perfect sense for them to feud with DIY because of Gargano's turn. He has to pay for his sins, whatever. They can do it in the what you did was wrong to teach you your lesson. You did it all for those titles, so we must take those titles from you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the only avenue to do it. And it does make
Yeah.
sense. Like, I'm not going to hate that at all. It just that there's no other way to really work that around. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the Mania match. Wyatt Six versus DIY. The tag divisions, Raw and SmackDown, are always an option for multi-man matches at WrestleMania, which I don't mind. There's been some banger triple threat fatal four-way tag team matches at some of the most recent WrestleManias. But I also don't want every tag team match at every WrestleMania to be a four-way, this, that, or whatever. It's often better to just get a straight up tag match sometimes. But DIY, incredible in-ring competitors. I love Loomis. I think Gacy is underrated. They're not maybe like the, five-star match guys. So maybe you do throw in the guns to that match too, to kind of just add some spice to it.
Or, maybe they kind of continue with Pretty Deadly and
Mm-hmm.
it's a
I
little
love
bit of a
Pretty Deadly.
working relationship and there's your 4-on-4.
Yeah.
Pretty Deadly and DIY versus the Wyatt Six. I mean, it's not far-fetched. Do I think it's going to happen? No. We're just spitballing here. But it's not impossible. Friday Night SmackDown, I don't think there's anything announced for the tag division, right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Well, actually, there's the Machine Guns versus Garza
Yes, yes,
and
yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
Umberto,
that's the
which is
number one
essentially
contender.
the number one contender
Yeah.
match. So I think tomorrow, when that match happens, if it ends clean, then we know it'll be straight up team on team, probably the Guns versus DIY.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then I think we get that multi-team match that we're kind of expecting that they're semi building towards. Not fully, but they have the route if they want it.
Yeah. I mean, Saturday night's main event, again, wrapping back to that a little bit. I still believe it's kind of shoehorned in there and doesn't really fit, but it's starting to shape up a bit with Gunther versus Jay, Braun versus Sheamus. We said it for the last Saturday night's main event. Tag team wrestling fits the bill for a Saturday night's main event, whether it's a straight up tag team match or a fatal four-way tag team match. I would be surprised if DIY versus the Guns versus any other tag team is not on this Saturday night's main event card.
Agreed. And the best part about that Saturday night's main event,
Mm-hmm.
yep, that dog just said it for me. We're gonna be live right here for our reactions on C2 Wrestling. So make sure you are subscribed, turn on notifications. If you go to our live section, you'll see there's already put up there Saturday night's main event and the Royal Rumble. We'll be live for both, live for every PLE going forward. The live streams are fun. The Monday Night Raw stream, the debut on Netflix, even though we were both congested as fuck,
Yeah.
it was still hilarious. I go
Yeah.
back and I watch some clips and I'm like,
Me
oh
too.
God, I hear myself. I sound like shit. Hopefully we sound better during Saturday night's main event, the Royal Rumble. And then we got a lot of special plans coming after that. So you gotta be subscribed. You gotta have the notifications on because we got some, let's just say, sweet stuff coming.
We definitely got some sweet stuff coming. We'll say that. We do have some new stuff that just came out. If you haven't checked it out, enter the vault with C2 Wrestling. We have started a new thing. We're going back to WWE's vault. We're watching some of these matches, kind of just talking over them,
Yeah.
telling you what we think, how the match is going, whether you should stay up and watch the match, or maybe you should go to bed and get some extra sleep. We got a lot of great content coming your ways, guys. If you haven't seen those videos, go check them out. Go back, watch all of our podcasts. There's been like anywhere from 3 to 45 of them by this point. I have no idea. I've lost track.
It's 20
But
something.
yeah, we ain't going anywhere. For now, C2 Wrestling.